Welcome everybody to the Rye Town Council meeting of Tuesday, February 25th, 2020. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You got the thing there, Tom?
Yeah, I forgot it. I got it. Sorry. Okay. Heavenly Father, bless this assemblage, grant us the wisdom to make every decision fair-minded and in the best interest for all its residents. Amen.
Amen.
Sorry.
I would have thought you had it memorized.
No, I should by now.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay, now we don't have to press anything here? Okay. Councilperson Lindsay Jackson, Councilperson Thomas Nardi,
Here.
Councilperson Pamela Jaffe,
Present.
Councilperson Jill Axelrod,
Here.
and Supervisor Gary Zuckerman.
Here. Our first item, of course, is adoption of the minutes of this time of January 21, 2020. If there are no objections or corrections, I have a motion in a second.
So moved. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Next item on the list is something that I should have done in January. The appointment of a deputy supervisor. That is an appointment solely of the supervisor. And I am hereby reappointing Tom Nardi to the position of deputy supervisor.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you for all your time.
And we have a special guest tonight, Blanca Lopez from Westchester County to talk about Census 2020. Welcome, Blanca, who is a resident of Westchester and the town of Rye.
I am. Thank you very much, Supervisor and the council, for inviting us to come and talk to you about census. I'm happy to be here. Actually, it's Commissioner Norma Drummond who usually does these presentations, but I'm very happy to be able to come here and present to the town where I live in. So here we
We're
go.
very happy to have you. And Norma, I know, chairs her zoning board, and this is her zoning board night.
Correct.
So we'll forgive Norma and welcome you.
Thank you. So we are actually 36 days away from the official 2020 census launch in the United States. April 1st, everyone knows, it's not only just April Fool's Day, but every 10 years it's also the official census date. The census actually began on January 21st when census enumerators started counting people in person in the Tuxtec Bay, which is in Alaska, the farthest, most remote place in the United States. So we are now approaching April 1st, and in the middle of March, actually on March 12th, every resident in the country will receive, or should receive, a letter from the Census Bureau inviting them to participate in the upcoming census. So why is the census important? Obviously, it's mandated by the U.S. Constitution that every resident living in the United States, citizen and non-citizen alike, needs to be counted. The information that is gathered and collected by the census basically determines two main things. Fair political representation. Obviously, it dictates the 435 seats of the U.S. House of Representatives, and it also looks into the redistricting of state Senate and Assembly seats and county legislature seats. The second reason why it's really important is because it determines an equitable distribution of public funds. There are about $880 billion across 2,500 programs, which is within 26 federal agencies such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, housing, and the data that is gathered through the census count determines how much money municipalities, counties, states, hospitals, school districts will receive based on these funds and based on the population data that is collected. It's also important to note that for every person who is not counted, that prospective municipality loses about $2,500. So that means that if 400 people are not counted, that equals to $1 million. $1 million that is lost every year for the next 10 years. So when people start realizing the impact of the amount of money that could be lost with a low census count, it really makes people think about how important it is for everybody to participate. So what's new for 2020? As I had mentioned before, everyone should be receiving a letter in mid-March inviting them to participate. There's now a new way to participate, which is that you can actually respond online. So you can use your smartphone, your tablet, your laptop. You can get up at 2 in the morning and decide, hey, I'm going to participate and I'm going to fill out my census form that way. But we also have to take into consideration that there are still a lot of people that have very limited to no access to the internet, and many people who do not have smartphones or do not have any of the means to participate that way. In addition to responding online, people can respond by calling the Census Bureau and speaking to a census representative. You can also respond once you get a census questionnaire in the mail, or if you wait until a census enumerator knocks on your door, and then you can participate that way. The other two means that the Census Bureau will have this time around is that they can actually ask neighbors or building managers to see how many people live in units. If there's a particular unit that a census enumerator has tried to knock on the door and tried to reach out and they haven't been able to find somebody to speak to, they can rely on information from neighbors. And at last resort, they can also use existing government records coming from whether it's like Medicaid rolls, tax forms, food stamps to determine if the unit is vacant or to obtain count. However, while the Census Bureau can obtain this information from these other federal departments, it does not mean that those federal departments can then get the information back from the Census Bureau. It's not shared mutually. So the census forms is comprised really of 9 questions. It talks about that. It asks about your housing units and vacancy, age, sex, relationship, race and Hispanic origin, and whether or not you own or rent the place that you're living at. Everybody knows that this past summer the federal courts blocked the citizenship question from being included in the census forms. If it's just a household of one person, it should take you less than 9 minutes, 10 minutes to fill it out. However, all of these questions must be answered by preferably the head of household, and it's answered for every member of the household living in that particular unit. We're also including in this presentation the American Community Survey, also known as the ACS, or some people also call it the long form. There are about 16 questions that come through ACS, and this is an ongoing survey that is sent to approximately 300,000 people, or addresses I should say, throughout the country each month. Simple data is subject to a margin of error with a 90% confidence interval. And it may be that some people may receive the ACS form along with the census form at the same time. So if people say to you, oh, I already filled it out, I came last month, you really have to figure out, well, did you fill out the American Community Survey form, or did you actually get the census form, which will not be released until after April. So there might be some confusion from certain people, and we just want to make sure that they're filling out the right form. We definitely want everyone, if they get both forms, to fill out both forms, but we are focusing a lot more on the actual census survey because it's 100% count of the population and it's regarded as accurate data as opposed to the ACS survey, which is more of an estimate of the information that they're collecting. So this slide gives you some census geography. It talks about the block, which is right in the middle of the slide here. We all live in a block, right? People who are living across the street from us live in a separate block. Easy as that. The census will never release any information at that particular level or a block level. Block groups is a combination, obviously, of several blocks. It is the lowest level of data source released Block groups contain between 600 to 3,000 people with an optimum size of about 1,500 people. Aggregate block groups become census tracts. And these contain between 1,200 to 8,000 people with an optimum size of about 4,000 people. So census data is released either at a block group level or a census tract level, primarily at a census tract. So LUCA, the local update of census addresses. This is work that was done behind the scenes in the summer of 2018. The Department of Planning for the county, for Westchester County, is a census affiliate. So they work alongside the Census Bureau to review and study of any information or any data that is given to them by the Census Bureau. And one of those activities has to be is the LUCA process. The Census Bureau asked the Department of Planning to review all of the addresses that they had on file based on primarily 2010 census, but also on the number of building permits that they had collected throughout the last decade. The Census Bureau had an official count of about 345,855 residential addresses in Westchester County. However, when the Planning Department finished their own review, they were able to find an additional 24,000 addresses that the Census Bureau did not have. This means that, possibly these addresses or these units were built within the last 10 years. Maybe some of them are vacant, or it could very well mean that there are people that were not counted in the last decennial census. Another activity that the Planning Department does on behalf of the Census Bureau is the Boundary and Annexation Survey. The Planning Department reviews the municipal boundaries to make sure that people counted by the census are appropriated to the correct municipality. So in this slide, you can see on my left side would be New Rochelle. In the middle, you see Mamaroneck Town. And on the right, you see Larchmont. The white lines represent the actual municipality boundaries. However, the blue lines represent what the Census Bureau had. So we want to make sure that people who are participating in the census are being counted to their appropriate municipality. So the Planning Department went through all of the census boundaries of all of Westchester County to make sure that the information was correct. So this is a timeline that tells you and explains all of the work that the Census Bureau has been doing to prepare for the 2020 census. As I had mentioned before, the census count officially kicked in on January 21st in Alaska. However, right now the Census Bureau is working on the group quarter counts, meaning that anybody who is living in a nursing home, in a group home, might be in jail, might be away at a college or living in college dorms, they are now being counted or in the process to be counted through that particular institution and in communications with the Census Bureau. Our residential count will not occur until, I said before, mid-March, April 1st, and you can actually participate in the census up until the end of July. However, if you don't want anybody knocking at your door, it would be best to, once you get that invitation in the mail, to go ahead and fill out your forms online or whichever way you think is best for you and your household. So this slide tells you how the Census Bureau will invite everyone to respond. About 95% of households will receive their census invitation in the mail. Please note that the Census Bureau will never do any cold calls. They will never send you emails. The only way that they can communicate with you would be through the mail. They'll send you a letter, they may send you a postcard. It's not until after you submit your census form. One of the questions in the questionnaire is you can write down your phone number if you like. So the Census Bureau can contact you if they have any questions about the responses that you've provided. But they will never call you. So that's one of the signs. Unfortunately, there's a lot of different types of fraud and scams that are happening as we speak. And we want to make sure everybody knows how to protect themselves from possible misinformation or possible crimes that may occur. So 95% of households will receive their census invitation in the mail. Almost 5% will receive an invitation from when a census taker may drop it off. Not everybody has some people may have a P.O. box, but that's not necessarily counts to get a census questionnaire in the mail. So some census enumerators will come and actually drop off a questionnaire. And less than 1% will be visited by a census taker, and they will actually participate with that census taker responding to the questions that they may have. By April 1st, you will have received about 3 letters or postcards in the mail. As I mentioned before, March 12th, everyone should be receiving an invitation to respond online. The second mailing will be on March 16th in the form of a letter. The third mailing will be on March 26th, which will be a postcard. And the fourth mailing will be the letter and a questionnaire that will be sent to households. The CDAM survey, CDAM stands for Census Barriers, Attitudes, and Motivator Studies. This is a survey that is done for every decennial census, every 2 years leading to that particular decennial census. And it's done between February to April 2018. It is 50,000 addresses throughout the 50 states and Washington, D.C. It's a questionnaire that is made up of about 61 questions covering a range of topics related to census participation and completion. In 2018, 67% of respondents stated that they will participate in Census 2020, while 33% stated that they would not for a variety of reasons. Now, if we look at the responses from 2008, when the CBAMS was last distributed, in that particular survey, 86% of respondents stated that they would participate in Census 2010. However, in reality, only 76% actually participated. Thus, the mail return rate of the 2010 census was 10 points lower than what was measured in the 2008 CBAM survey. So should this happen again with that decrease from the 67% that said that they would participate in 2018, and once census occurs, we see that only 57% actually participates, then there is great cause for concern as to how many people are not going to be counted. Also to take into consideration that when this survey was taking place 2 years ago, the citizenship question was still going to be on the questionnaire, so that may have served as a deterrent for people to not want to participate. The survey also asked how familiar people are with census. 21% of respondents answered that they do not know why the census even exists in the first place. And other reasons why people identified not wanting to participate was apathy and efficacy, concerns about data confidentiality and privacy, fear of repercussions, distrust in government, and few perceived personal benefits. On the flip side, public services were important factors for people to want to participate. Almost 94% of respondents said that if money went directly to hospitals and healthcare, they would gladly participate in the census. Again, fire departments, police departments, roads and highway infrastructure was rated very high, as well as money for schools and the education system. So this map shows you the county's hard-to-count areas of Westchester. This is based on the 2010 mail return rate. Remember that in 2010 you could only respond to the census by filling out your questionnaire and mailing it back to the Census Bureau, unlike this census, which you will be able to do online. In 2019, the Rockefeller Institute of Policy released a list of the 500 census tracts that would more than likely have a low response rate. And unfortunately, and these are the 500 census tracts throughout the state. And unfortunately, Westchester County had the first #1 census tract in Yonkers. Overall, within those 500 census tracts, there were about 20 census tracts from Westchester County, primarily in Mount Vernon, in Yonkers, in Northern White Plains, in Portchester, and in Peekskill. But as you can see from the map, the red areas show where the greatest, the highest percentage of low turnover rate was from the 2010 male response rate. So we're raising awareness. Way back in April 1st of 2019, the county executive signed an executive order to put together a county complete count committee. This complete count committee is made up of 27 people, and it also includes department representatives from various departments throughout the county. And they meet once a month to talk about different initiatives and opportunities for people and communities to raise awareness on the census. The county executive also urged municipalities in general to create their own local complete count committee. I'm always happy to report that the village of Portchester was the first municipality throughout the county to form their complete count committee, and they've actually been meeting for close to, if not more than a year, in putting together a strategic plan to do a lot of census, raising awareness on the census and trying to focus on hard-to-count populations. Hard-to-count populations are described as subgroups that unfortunately have had historically low count in past census. These are children 5 years and younger, immigrants, people whose language is second language is English, renters, single-parent households, seniors, and people who are disabled and veterans. So we're always trying to focus a lot on what type of activities we could create and we could deliver in order to increase the count from these particular subgroups. We have also partnered with the Westchester Library System and also T-Mobile.
Before reassessment, this is an example, not our town in particular. Those properties would now pay 72% after the reassessment if the homestead option were not adopted. But if adopted in this example, then the tax share would remain at roughly the 65%. So the use of homestead, by adopting homestead, the town does have two different tax rates. One rate for properties classified as homestead or quote-unquote residential, and one tax rate which is typically higher for properties classified as quote-unquote non-homestead commercial. Homestead remains in effect unless the town rescinds this option by local law without referendum no later than the town's tax levy date. So just so you know, I don't want to get into the weeds here because it gets a little complicated, but this is the document that I use to calculate the proportions. And this is a New York State form that assessors throughout New York State use. So it's a standard form, and I have to plug in certain figures, and this particular form calculates what's called the current percentages. And then those are used in the next form, which is the calculation of the adjusted base proportions. There's a section 1, which is this one, and there's a section 2. And as you can see with what I've circled there, those are the final numbers that become the adjusted base proportions that are in the resolutions that are going to be adopted. And again, that's a rough overview, but if you have any questions, I'm certainly happy to try to answer them. There's also a pamphlet out there online from New York State about the homestead option. I can provide that to you, email it to you. It's in the packet? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So, and for anybody watching at home, a lot of what Denise had just gone over is in the pamphlet that's attached to the agenda. I also asked Denise to provide for me and the council a comparison of the proportion if Homestead is not adopted as opposed to whether it is adopted. And we have to adopt it for the town of Rye, the village of Portchester, the village of Rybrook, the Blindbrook School District, the Portchester School District, and the Rye Neck School District. So, to look at that, the town of Rye as a whole, I won't go over each one of them, just as an example. The proportion, if not adopted, would be 76% homestead and 23% non-homestead. But because we had calculated the adjusted base proportions for homestead was 69% homestead and 30% non-homestead, which is a difference of about 7% townwide. The village of Portchester basically is, it's 62% versus 55%, and village of Rybrook is much larger, almost 84% compared to almost 77%. And so you can see there's quite a difference, and this is a savings to the homeowner, and it is a detriment, if you will, to the commercial property owner who has to pay a higher tax rate than the residential homeowner does. The largest difference is that in the Blindbrook School District, 90% of the tax base would be payable by the homeowner, and only 10%, less than 10%, by the commercial tax base, because obviously the tax base in the Blindbrook School District is much smaller. Commercial tax base is much smaller than in a place like Portchester. So anyway, that's basically how it works. It's a savings to the residential homeowner and is a bit of a burden to the commercial property owner. So at some time in the future, we may have to look at this because many businesses feel that the tax rate is excessive on the commercial properties. And that not this year, possibly down the road, we'll take a look at it. But for this year, we have the homestead-based proportions. And let me just say I'm going to ask for a vote on a motion and a second on each of them, and then I'll state what they are. May I have a motion and a second?
Motion, so moved.
I'll second.
Second, thank you. So we're voting for the town of Rye, the village of Portchester, the village of Rybrook, the Blindbrook School District, the Portchester School District, and the Rye Neck School District, all as set forth in each individual resolution. Okay? Is that okay, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we did this.
Is that okay, Mr. Attorney?
We did this.
Yes.
Okay, okay. If there's any further discussion? No. Then, Hope, please call the roll.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
Councilperson Jack?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes, thank you all. And thank you, Denise, for the
Thank you.
explanation.
One thing I forgot to mention is that also John Woolham, who we have come to know through the reval, who's the Regional Director of Office of Real Property Services through New York State Department of Tax and Finances, reviews my numbers. He also sends them to Albany. They review them. So they're double, triple checked, just so we can be assured. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next resolution is a revision of the personnel policy. Debbie, do you want to discuss this, please?
Yes, this is a one-time request for an exception to our personnel policy. It also includes a stipend. The entire request is based on additional work requirements that are outside of the scope of several employees within the assessment department. So as we get close to the final deadline for the reval, we have our senior members of the department are working very hard and outside the scope of their traditional tasks to work on the values and the additional work that's required to make sure that everything is right by the time the reassessment notices go out. And because they are working outside of the scope of their normal duties, one, they are prohibited from taking any of the vacation time that they have earned, and there's a deadline by which employees must take their vacation time from the previous year. These employees are prohibited from taking any time off during this period, therefore they would lose those days. So we're asking for an extension of the deadline by which they use or lose their accrued vacation days. In addition, we are asking for a stipend for those employees, which is a stipend based on their compensation levels, to compensate them for putting in significant extra time outside of their normal hours. I can go in, there's a memo from the assessor that goes into great detail as to why this is the smartest way to achieve our goals. And I happily go into those in detail if you'd like me to.
Well, what is the rationale for not giving overtime?
The rationale is plain and simple. These are salaried employees, so they're not paid hourly. So we can't pay them overtime that way. This is, these stipends are a response to that. And our controller can certainly speak to that.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm pointing at Davies. I said, is this correct from the controller's point of view?
That is correct. Only hourly employees, get paid, time and a half over 40 hours. But if you're salaried, you're exempt.
And they were required to work overtime? They were required to work extra hours?
Well, if they're required to work extra hours as part of their normal job, that might be one thing. But if you're asking them to take on additional assignments outside of their normal job, then that's what Debbie's referring to.
And why aren't we having the reval company pay them? If they're doing...
The reval company isn't paying them, we're paying them.
I know, but why aren't they paying them if we're doing their job?
Denise, do you want to address that?
Sounds like a loaded question. Sure, I'd be happy to. We're not doing their job. We're reviewing the work in general. It's an extra set of eyes, several eyes on properties, so we make sure we get to the right number. That's really what it's all about, but we're not doing their job.
So in other words, what you're saying is that the reval company has created these values, and what we're doing is going through and checking absolutely every one to
Giving them
make
a
sure they've
sanity
got it
check.
right.
That's right.
Right, so,
So, and that's outside the normal scope of employment, their job descriptions?
yes.
All right. I have a motion and a second.
Just have one question, is to the not allowed to take vacation time, not allowed to take time off during this process, and why that might be? Or is that-
I'll take this one. The amount of vacation time that an employee is permitted to take is based on their longevity. Our policy, our personnel policy requires that vacation time be taken in the calendar year, and they also have the first quarter in which to take any additional vacation time that they didn't have a chance to take. And those days expire on March 31st.
They can't carry over any to the next year?
Yes, until the carryover expires on March 31st of the following year.
So they lose them. If they don't use them, they lose them.
That's correct.
And it's just due to the workload. It's not they're expressly prohibited from taking the days right now. They just have so much that they have to do that they cannot.
Well, our policy is that vacation has to be coordinated with your department head, and it has to be at a time that is not a detriment to productivity.
Yes.
Right. So for example, in the run-up to our posting the role, the assessment department again has an all-hands-on-deck policy. People don't take vacation while they're getting the final roll together. There are other departments that will have those kinds of requirements for their people as well. So vacation has to be taken when you're not on deadline. And right now, the assessment department is on super deadline.
I understand that. Thank you for explaining it.
What is the precedent for this? Has the town done something like this before? I mean, in the tree, my tree.
You know, that's a very good question, and I don't know the answer.
How was this something that was requested by the people that are performing?
Yeah, this was something that was proposed both by our monitor, the reval monitor, and also the assessor.
And the reason for that was that we could have hired outside consultants to do this work, but it doesn't make sense to hire outside consultants with a ramping up period and a learning curve to get them started at a short period of time to really, take it all on and get it done. It was way more efficient to ask the staff that knows the properties to just step up to the plate and take on a little more than usual, because honestly, in defense of the staff, they're already putting in overtime every single day. They don't take lunch, they work overtime, they work beyond the regular work day. I know other departments, staff does that as well, but the staff does this as a matter of practice, and this is clearly above and beyond that scope of work.
How were these numbers arrived at?
How,
The numbers were arrived at, we calculated what would be the hourly compensation for these staff and multiplied it by the number of hours that the assessor estimated was going to be required.
So have you been keeping track of the additional hours that you've had to work, although you are not hourly employees, in order to figure out
Well,
this amount?
we certainly track time that people work, so yes.
that's all in the paychecks.
Yeah, that's our timekeeping
Payroll.
system.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah.
wasn't aware.
Yeah, good question.
I'm sure you can appreciate wanting to know where numbers come from.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you.
Motion and a second.
Also move.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilperson Nardi,
Yes.
Councilperson Jaffe,
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod,
Yes.
Supervisor Zuckerman.
Yes. The next item is a resolution regarding the residential and non-residential rental fees at Crawford Mansion Communities. Debbie?
Yes, so the resolution that we have and the proposal before you is a direct response, a follow-on to the discussion last month. We are not proposing a change in the residential rates. That should have been edited because we're only proposing that we are adding adding non-residential rates to our rate schedule, so that non-residents are now permitted, would now be permitted to rent the facilities at Crawford Park, whereas prior that was not possible.
So
And
basically,
it's a pretty even 30% across the board as discussed.
I was just going to say, 30%. So the differential is 30% between residential and non-residential.
Correct.
I have a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion.
I'll
discussion? Yeah. No?
No,
Okay.
I'm cool.
Well, we're glad you're You're always cool. Please call the roll.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
Councilperson Jaffe?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes. A resolution retaining Helen Thurston as our grant writer, I think.
Yes, so Helen Thurston has written a number of grants for us and also for Rye Town Park. She has been remarkably successful. I've never seen a grant writer have that kind of a winning streak, frankly. And of course that, past performance is not a guarantee of future performance, but I can tell you that she's been highly productive and helpful. And so I'm looking forward to having her assistance to leverage my time, frankly, and to help the town find new revenue sources. So most recently, she wrote the invasive species grant application for the DEC that earned us an award of $100,000 to eradicate the invasive species that both at Crawford Park and Rye Town Park. And you've been able to see the results of that because we've had staff eradicating vines throughout the fall, and it's miraculous. It's like waking up the Sleeping Beauty's kingdom from where it was buried underneath vines. It's been quite extraordinary. So that's what this is. This is a resolution to be able to re-engage Helen Thurston to work on projects as needed.
And her rate is the same, or is it?
Her rate is the same.
Okay.
Nothing extra, even though she's been so successful.
I didn't suggest it, neither did she.
Motion and a second, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
Councilperson Jaffe?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod? And
Yes.
Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes. Now, a resolution to appoint a records access officer and an appeals officer. And Hope, you explained this to me, but I forgot. What's the difference between what you are now and a records
I'm
access?
a records management officer, and that's the keeper of all records. And a records access officer is that all FOILs, all freedom of information requests are filed with me.
Okay.
And then if there's ever an appeal, the town attorney was now appointed as the appeals officer by resolution.
And we learned we had to do this. Where, Debbie? Association of Towns?
Mhm.
Yes.
Or is it
Albany.
right?
Yes, we did. We both Hope and I and Nathan Garces attended a briefing from the controller's office, which advised us what kinds of documents they were looking for in our minutes. And part of that presentation was an annual adoption and appointment of a records
Records access
Access
officer and
officer.
appeals officer.
And
Yes.
appeals officer.
Okay. So you do learn things at the Association of Towns meetings, don't we?
Oh, yes, a lot.
May I have a motion in a second?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
course.
Councilperson Nardi?
Of course. Yes.
Councilperson Jaffe?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes, and by the way, there is no extra salary attached to this. Jeff?
That just means I'm going to deny every appeal.
You put that on the record.
That was a joke.
Hope I have one question. Have we been getting our FOIL requests more through the website than on paper?
We get quite a few through the website, but we also get them in person. And so many requests are for taxes that were paid, well, actually taxes that were levied from 2009 to 2019, and under what classification they were taxed on. And these are things that Nick supplies and Carol Truant, she gets it just like that. So as soon as they're...
For the classification?
Yeah, they want to know the property class, if they pay taxes on a two-family or a three-family or a one-family. And that's required through the building department because properties that are being sold, they have to, some never received the certificate of occupancy, or there's permits open and things like that. So we get loads over. I have a stack.
Can we do those over, through the internet, through the website?
Well, if they come in person.
No, but I mean, can we? Do we have the ability?
Oh,
If
yeah.
they did, we do.
Right, yeah. And
Because I know, under the law, I believe you can file, even if you prefer the website, you have the right to file it in person.
Okay, in answer to your question, that's correct, because there was an issue once that does someone have to fill out a form if they don't. They can email us a request and
Right.
no,
But it is
I think
easier,
that-
but they can request it through the FOIL website, the
Right.
FOIL part of the
Right,
website.
so we get a lot through the email, a lot through the,
All right, very good, thank you very much.
you're welcome.
And the next resolution is to appoint P.F.K. O'Connor Davies as our auditors.
Did you vote?
Pardon me?
The record?
Yes, Tommy voted enthusiastically.
Looking at this, the second resolution should not be on this agenda, it should be on the Rye Town Park agenda.
I wondered if it was supposed to be, but, okay.
The town of Rye engagement letter.
Mhm.
We have to put the Rye Town Park engagement letter on
It's already on the
the
March
park
agenda.
website.
Yeah.
So just the town of Rye engagement letter has the,
It was on the,
doesn't,
ones, right?
I caught it, so.
Okay, right, good.
So the, is the amount the same as last year?
It's less.
It's less, yeah, it's less. We suggested that we had become, with the assistance of M Group, we've become a much easier, faster client to serve, and that should be reflected in their rate, which they graciously did.
See, I knew the answer to that question before I asked it, I just wanted it.
It gave me great pleasure to say it, and thank you for the opportunity.
May I have a motion and a second, please?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Councilperson Hardy?
Yes.
Councilperson Jackie?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
And Supervisor Serna?
Yes. Hope is so quick tonight. I can't even say call the roll. She's got it. She's got the roll.
You're gonna say a lot on this piece of paper.
Okay, and our last resolution is the town of Rye procurement policy. Debbie, you want to say what that's about and why we have to do this?
Yes, another piece of learning that we did at the Association of Towns, briefing from the Controller's Office, is that the council should affirmatively approve a whole set of major policies. So I'm going to be presenting them one at a time as we go through the year. The first one, and I hope the easiest one, was the procurement policy,
Which we already have.
which we already had and has no changes in it from what we adopted 2 years ago.
In the future, Hope, I think, when we get all of these passed, we should put these on all with the reorganization
Yes.
resolutions so that we can do them all at one time.
Well, this was another, right, they will in the future, but
No, I
this is
know,
something that we
we're
didn't
gonna-
realize had to be adopted every year.
Right, but as we get all of these now through
yes.
this year, then next year in January, we can all put them on
Yes,
and adopt them again.
right, the organization needed.
Okay. Motion and a second, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilperson Martin?
Yes.
Councilperson Jackie?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes, thank you. Our reports, do we have an additional report from the assessor?
Good evening again. No additional reports, just a reminder to everybody to watch for the change of assessment notice that's coming out next week. Envelope will have important assessment information in red, so don't throw it away as junk mail. And open it up, look at it carefully, make sure there's the right number of zeros there, because there's a big difference between 500,000 and 5 million. So if, look it over, give it a sanity check. If you have any issues, give us a call. But Tyler presented their PowerPoint about doing their informal reviews. I don't want to take up your time now to go through that. It's on our website. But just pay attention to that notice, because everything will be in there. How to file an appeal, and the deadlines and the upcoming important dates. Okay, any questions?
Any questions? Nope.
Okay,
Thank you, Denise.
that's it, thank you.
I guess we've had our Crawford Park report, unless anybody wants to add anything to that, Deb.
Camille's got it.
Camille?
I don't know, Camille may be waiting to do just that. Give me a second.
Well, in the meanwhile, while you're getting her, finance, Dave? I thought I saw her leaving.
Oh, she's leaving? Oh.
Two quick things. One is the monthly report for January for the tax receivables does have an oversight on it. There is one property that did redeem in January, at the end of January, that still listed as outstanding. So a revision will be sent to the board and to the attorney and the tax receiver. It's property number 6 on page 3 was redeemed. But there are still 19 other properties, and Jeff has agreed to forego any vacation in the near future to start working on that.
We're talking about, I mentioned that 12 terrain.
Yes. Yeah.
So we have 5, and let's see.
On the last page, there's 19.
14, not 12, 14 terrain. Number 6 on the last page.
Yeah, I was
Right.
just listing the number.
Right, so there are 19 left.
Yes.
And basically, I had a conversation with the town attorney just today about that, and we are proceeding possibly by the end of the week with our final notices and petitions. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been sending them out as I get the title reports.
So you're going to set a redemption date fairly soon?
We've already done that.
We have. And when's that?
June 5th, I believe.
All right, so people on this list have until June 5th. Otherwise, we submit for final judgment. And I guess nothing's changed on the other side. Okay,
Okay.
very good.
The only other
That's
point,
it?
no, one other point I would make is that the auditors are in-house, so they'll be here all week, so.
Not here.
Not here,
Not
they're at the town,
At the town.
doing the annual audit, everything's going very smoothly, so
So
everything.
next time we can ask for further reduction.
Yes, yeah, well, I think we just signed a 4-year engagement letter, so that's, add those discounts in them. Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay.
Here's our handouts for Nick.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of Town Council. Excuse me. Tonight I appear before you as my former job with the town as records clerk. In recognition of Black History Month, I present to you something from the historic books of the town of Rye, The Freeing of the Slaves. If you check the dates, this was all before the Civil War. And these people were granted by the town board because they controlled everything, freedom, at the request of the landowners and of course their owners. If you go to our office, you will see our assessment roll there from 1799. At those days, it was not property taxes, it was personal taxes. And on there, you will see taxed on the slaves because they considered the slaves personal property. And the town folks decided before the Civil War to free these 37 people. And that's what you have in front of you this evening. Okay, any questions?
Not a question, just a comment. I'm looking at the names of the owners of the slaves, and there are some very prominent names.
Yeah.
Bush,
Lion Farm,
Homestead,
Halstead,
Jay, Lyon,
and Browns. The Browns were very popular down in Rye there. They had a lot of property.
Purdy,
Purdy.
and Thor. Theo, I never know how to pronounce that.
Yeah.
Theo? Theo Road. So all of those people were slave owners.
Were slave owners.
Nick,
Okay,
thank you very
any
much for this
questions?
information.
Thank you.
Does Dave Thomas have this?
Yes, he does.
Yes.
And Greg has this?
Pardon?
Greg?
Greg.
Greg O'Connell?
I believe he does, but he comes and sees me every now and then. When he comes, I'll make sure he gets this. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
he'd be very interested.
Thank you, Nick. And your procedures report is submitted?
Yes, we are working on, we just got the levy, by the way, from the County of Westchester. So we will be working on the April tax amounts, and I should have that for you next meeting, the
And
percentages.
When does that do for the people?
April 30th.
April
The bill will be
30th.
out April 1st, due April 30th, one payment, because the county doesn't allow multiple payments.
And do we know how the tax rate for the town of Rye compares this year to last year?
Not yet, I'm working on that right now, because they have to split the homestead, non-homestead.
Okay, very good.
Do you want to mention?
Thank you.
Well, Rye Brook, you have a few more days if you haven't paid your second installment of village taxes. You have an extra day because it's leap
29th,
year.
leap
So you
year.
have the 29th, yes.
All right, very good, thank you, Nick. And
You know, if you pay it on the 29th, you just have to pay it once every 4 years.
Well, you can mail it by the 29th, as long as you get it
Right.
postmarked.
Right,
It's still valid.
town clerk's
It'll be
report
in
has
their
been
property.
submitted.
Yes.
And you have an announcement.
Pardon me?
You have an announcement.
Oh, about the mobile.
The mobile shredder.
Shredder coming on March 21st. And it's a Saturday from 10 to 1 at the parking lot at 222 Great Church Street. And one more thing. We are so fortunate to have Nick, the historian, because he was hired years ago to clean out the basement that was flooded. And with all these old records. And he has a mind that, like a photographic memory. People come in all the time with genealogy or certain resolutions or things like that. And I'm very fortunate to have him by my side because there's so many things that I have to respond to as far as old resolutions or old minutes. And he just was able to answer me, you know, instantly. And also, I just would like to recognize the workers in the tax office. I'm grateful for Neva and Vivian, and also in the court, because these are people that don't get to take their vacation, and they lose it every year. They don't only have the 5 days left, they have weeks left. But they're so grateful to have their job, and they're just, and they're the quiet, unsung workers, and dedicated, devoted, and they just love the town they live in, and they love doing what they do. And I just want to have them recognized.
Thank you for recognizing them. We all do too.
We appreciate them. I don't,
Okay.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
yeah, not yet, hang on. Don't go too fast tomorrow, here at 7 o'clock. We do have a sustainability meeting. And just to let everyone know, some things that we'll be discussing. February 29th and March 29th, we do have a Rye Town beach cleanup. That's 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And something we'd like to talk to tomorrow with the town, or the villages of Rybrook and Portchester, is a joint Earth Day community cleanup on April 25th with an after party, which Debbie so cunningly put together last year. So please, if you can join us tomorrow, let's talk spring cleaning. It's time.
Thank you, Pam.
No problem. Thank you for letting me have 2 seconds to talk about cleaning.
Actually, it was my error to call for an adjournment so quickly without letting the council speak. Mr. Deputy Supervisor.
Well, just thank you for reappointing me again.
You're very welcome. We'll make you work hard. Nothing additional from me, I've spoken enough. Motion to adjourn.
So.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Our next meeting is 1/17. Thank you all.